Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally gripping story of trauma and supernatural terror. We're going to break down the exact mechanics of suspense along the way, really looking at how a real-world physical tragedy can literally be weaponized into a psychological and spiritual nightmare. I want your terror. Just pause and let that sink in for a second, because that right there, that's our explosive entry point. That single line, delivered by a guy named David Grinholm, instantly sets this dark, thrilling tone for the whole narrative. You see, it's not about revenge through, physical violence. It's about inflicting raw, unfiltered fear. So let's look at exactly how this story builds up to that chilling declaration. Now, every great supernatural thriller really needs a solid baseline of reality to create a stark contrast for the horrors to come. So, Section 1, the clinical reality, establishing the baseline. The author creates a very deliberate, totally jarring juxtaposition here. Over in reality, we've got the incredibly sterile, grounded environment of Dr. Rex Malvason's London clinic. We get all these great grounding details, right? The damp wind outside, the heavy antiseptic air inside, the stately brick walls, and Dr. Rex himself, this kind-faced, silver-haired chief of prosthetics. It feels incredibly safe. But contrast that against the vivid, terrifying landscape of the dream world his wife, Daphne, is about to enter. We're talking a luxurious ancient bed, rich red and gold drapes, and a hideous, crushing brute. The story specifically anchors us in this modern medical reality just so that the descent into ancient supernatural horror feels that much more intense. And that gap between psychological rage and the supernatural is bridged right here in Section 2, a phantom limbs curse, the inciting incident. So Dr. Rex has this patient, David Grinholm, who's missing his left leg, and this brilliantly illustrates how the narrative weaponizes a very real medical condition, phantom limb syndrome, and turns it into something absolutely monstrous. We get this concept of the ghost limb. So instead of the patient simply feeling the phantom pain of a missing appendage like usual, that rotting trauma is weaponized. It's actually cast onto another person. And the target isn't Dr. Rex, it's his wife, Daphne. She walks into the clinic wearing this fancy coat and a silk scarf, just possessing completely unscarred limbs. David looks at her unbroken privilege, and his smoldering rage just boils over. Listen to the absolute chilling precision of this curse. While my ghost limb rots, yours shall grow claws. Every breath of yours will be choked. Let the nightmare begin. I mean, wow. David's resentment of Daphne's soft, unbroken life is the fuel here. He completely refuses her polite pity. Instead, he uses the literal void of his missing leg as a conduit to project a physical curse right onto her. It's a terrifying exchange. He's lost a piece of his body, so he intends to take away her mind and her very breath. And that pulls us directly out of the clinic and plunges us into the crushing, frantic weight of Section 3, inside the nightmare, sleep paralysis. The anatomy of this nightmare is actually a literal recreation of Henry Fuseli's classic painting, The Nightmare. First up, we've got leaden limbs, just this absolute inability to move. Second, squatting right on her chest and pinning the breath from her lungs, is the incubus. It's this hideous brute, kind of a mix of baboon and gargoyle features, just leering with malicious glee. And third, the truest horror is lurking right there in the crimson folds of the drapes, a demonic horse with burning, lidless eyes and nostrils flaring with hellfire. But you know what truly unravels Daphne's mind? It's the static, unchanging repetition of this exact frozen tableau. Night after night, she is trapped in a space she absolutely cannot control. As Daphne lies there paralyzed, a creeping coldness starts, specifically from her left foot, almost as if it were turning to stone. Now, think back to the clinic for a second. What is David Grenholm missing? His left leg. This physical detail is the smoking gun. It directly mirrors the amputated limb, physically cementing David's dark magic onto Daphne's body right there within the dream space. With Daphne growing gaunt and conventional medicine completely failing her, Dr. Rex becomes desperate. Which brings us to Section 4, Enter the Medium, Spiritual Diagnosis. So he brings in Reba Herald. Reba is just a fantastic character. She shows up with a worn leather valise, smelling strongly of sage and rain. And immediately her diagnosis shifts the entire paradigm. She tells Dr. Rex point blank that this is not a sickness of the body. She recognizes that David's curse has literally grown a physical form within Daphne's sleepscape. Reba's immediate understanding of these supernatural mechanics highlights her totally non-traditional approach to spiritual warfare. She knows exactly what she's dealing with here.
And Reba's approach to breaching the dream? It's entirely non-traditional. We're talking no lit candles, no loud chanting, none of that. She simply sits by the bed, takes Daphne's limp hands, and begins this low, discordant hum. The sensory shift in the real room is incredible. The air grows frigid, it pulses, it hardens and thickens, until it literally feels like water. Reba is actively breaching the veil, crossing over to become the single cold point of focus on the very periphery of Daphne's nightmare.
We have finally reached the breaking point. Section 5, Banishing the Demon, the climax.
So the ultimate question the narrative poses to us right now is, how do you fight a nightmare?
Well, the answer is a single, massive command from Reba. Exhale. Daphne feels this word, but not just as a sound. She feels it as a commanding force that shatters the crushing paralysis of the incubus squatting on her chest. This scene brilliantly illustrates the mechanics of the exorcism. It's essentially a coordinated attack from both reality and the dream. Step 1, Reba clamps her hand over Daphne's chest in the real world, pushing down with a literal physical counterforce. Step 2, inside the dream, this triggers a violent wrench. Daphne's chest explodes outward, and she unleashes this erupting light, almost like a solar flare, right from her very soul. And step 3, this light doesn't just push the monster off, it completely unravels it. The dense, furry form of the goblin just dissolves into smoke. A shockwave hits the demonic horse, and it disintegrates, literally torn into atomic ash.
Notice how there's a simultaneous resolution happening in both realms here. Inside the dream, the ancient bed drapes dissolve into ribbons of light. Daphne, bathed in this radiant glow, feels that crushing weight lift, and warmth finally returns to her frozen left limb. Life just floods back into her. And in reality, a silent room. Daphne takes a deep, rattling, totally free breath, and her eyes snap open.
Reba, pale and sweating, but totally steady, confirms it. The ghost limb has been banished. Daphne grips the real sheets, feeling the full length of her legs again. You see, by stripping the supernatural power away, the narrative reveals the profound psychological truth of the situation. Those ancient monsters are gone. The only monster left in the world is David Grenholm, a tragic, bitter man with a wooden leg. His psychological hold, his stolen power over her, is completely and permanently broken.
Which really leaves us to ponder the core theme of this incredible story. We've seen how a physical loss fueled a truly terrifying psychological invasion. But I want you to think about this. If our deepest traumas, or even the traumas of other people, can take physical form in our nightmares, who is truly in control of the dark spaces in your mind when you close your eyes?